Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamers. Say, where did Luke get his prosthesis at the end of The Empire Strikes Back? From the secondhand store. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to take a look at my top 10 Star Wars games of all time. So we're going to take a look at my top 10 Star Wars games of all time. I always rate these, or at least most of my lists I rate according to how much fun I have. And so this was a very difficult list because I always have fun with a lot of these games. I do want to start by taking a look at a couple of honorable mentions here. This first one is, I was kind of reluctant to put it on the list because it's so silly, and yet it was so much fun. My friends and I played it, and I'll be blunt, it's a kid's game. It's for little kids. But we played it, and it was surprisingly addictive how much fun we had with it. This is Loopin' Chewie from Hasbro. Loopin' Chewie is a game where you've got Chewie flying around the Millennium Falcon, and he's going up and down as he's going, and you want to hit him at the right time so that he lands on other people's stormtroopers and takes them out before he takes all of your stormtroopers out. But it's a really fun, silly, super simple game. Really enjoyed that one. Next up is a little more serious game. This was a game called Empire versus Rebellion, which was a card game from Fantasy Flight Games. You kind of had the Rebels versus the Empire, and you would kind of try to pick out cards that would then fight against the other side there. That was a really fun game as well. But now let me go ahead and get in my top 10 games of all time. Number 10. My number 10 is Star Wars Risk. This is from Hasbro. This is unlike any other Risk game you've ever played, and I know there's a lot of variations on Risk and different games you can play with Risk, but this particular one is very, very different. Essentially, you're playing out the end of Return of the Jedi, and you have different battles that are going on. The whole board looks like a TIE fighter, and on one side of the board, you have kind of the Battle of Endor, trying to take down the shield. On the other side of the board, you have Luke and Darth Vader engaging in their epic duel, and in the center of the board, you have the fleet trying to take out the Rebel fleet trying to take out the opposing fleet before it can take out the Death Star. So you're trying to win on all three of these boards, and it's really fun and clever the way they did it. It's a fairly simple game, but there's a lot of fun. There's card play here, and it just does a really good job of kind of throwing you into the Star Wars universe on kind of a simple level, but still a very fun and engaging one. So that is number 10. That is Star Wars Risk, and that is from Hasbro. My number 9 is a game, and this was my number 1 game of 2014. I really enjoyed it when it came out. I ended up giving it away just because I didn't play it much, and there was a campaign version. I played through the campaign, but then there was also kind of a head-on-head two-player game that was really a lot of fun. I like the two-player game much more than I like the campaign game. But this was Imperial Assault from Fantasy Flight Games. So like I say, in the campaign game, one player played the Empire, and they'd subsequently come out with an app that could do this. But one player would play the Empire, the other players would play the Rebels as they're going on these various missions to take down the Empire. And then, of course, there was also the head-on-head game where you would have, you kind of select numbers of units, and of course it's a dungeon crawl. You've got Darth Vader, you've got Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, etc., and then a number of other characters that would engage in these battles. But of course, there's dice combat, there's ranged combat, there's melee combat. Some characters that have the Force and can use the Force, and it was just I really like the dice combat system here, and that was really a lot of fun. Like I say, I ended up giving it away because I just never got to the table, but still, it's an absolutely fantastic game that I really enjoyed. So that is number 9, Imperial Assault. That was from Fantasy Flight Games. My number 8 is a game that I actually just played for the first time a few weeks ago, and it was a heck of a lot of fun. It's based on an existing system that they kind of adapted to this IP. It's been adapted to several IPs, but this is Jobas Palace, a love letter game. So essentially, you take the game of love letter, which is you have one card, you draw another card, then you have to play one of those two cards, and they mix it up into the Star Wars universe, into, as I say, Jabba's Palace. I've always loved Love Letter because of its simplicity, and yet it's an incredibly tense game, and there's some bluff there, and I really enjoyed it. To see it kind of transformed into this Star Wars IP is even better. And they kind of mix things up because here it's not exactly the same. You would have these like agenda cards, so you could win different ways, different games by completing the agendas. And so I really like that too, that it did mix it up somewhat. But that is number 8, that is Jobas Palace, and that is from Z-Man Games. My number 7 games here is Star Wars Villainous. Star Wars Villainous. This is a game, again, I just played this, I think, around last Christmas. It was actually a present from Zach, and I took it to Idaho with me. I played it with Kim, and one of her kids. We played it a few times, and it is really fun. I love the Villainous games, the Disney Villainous games. The Marvel one I thought was okay, but I really like the Disney ones. And I'm not generally a Disney fan. Zach is. He loves all things Disney. I could take it or leave it. But I really liked the Star Wars version here. You can be Darth Vader and you've got to corrupt Luke. You got to bring him to the dark side. You can be General Grievous and you've got to collect different lightsabers. You could be Ventress and you have to fulfill these specific missions for her. Kylo Ren's in it and you've got to get like all your like Force stuff to the evil side. So there's a lot of really cool stuff here. But it works. I also like here too how you've got cards. You can play cards as different locations that you can go to, and you have that option as well. So that's a lot of fun. But this is a great, Villainous is always fun because it's always, I'm trying to complete my thing and screw up my enemies as much as I can. And this does a great job with it in the Star Wars universe and Star Wars theme. So that is number 7. That is Star Wars Villainous, and that is from Ravensburger. My number 6 is another game that I just played recently. Again, I played it, I think, for the first time around Christmas. I played it a few times since. And this is Star Wars The Clone Wars from Z-Man Games. And this game is essentially a riff on Pandemic. You've got the galaxy, you've got all the different planets out there, and droids. Separationist droids are like being dropped on these planets. And as the Jedi, you have to go out to these different planets and do battle with them. Now, in the regular Pandemic, the diseases would spread. Here, when you kind of reach critical, what happens on a planet is you get blockades. And if you get so many blockades, and then you need to put out more, you advance a threat track. And if the threat track gets all the way down, you're dead. But what else is cool here, too, is as you're battling the droid armies, you also have to solve some missions. You have to go to this mission, a planet with a mission token, and fulfill whatever is mission there. And you use cards, and cards are cool because they're kind of your health, but they're also things you play and you tap when you use them. And it's really a fun system, and it's great to see this Pandemic idea given the Star Wars treatment. It's incredibly fun, it's incredibly tense, and you really feel a sense of engagement every time you play it. So that is Star Wars The Clone Wars, and that is my number 6. That is from Z-Man Games. Okay, so now we're really getting into it. Number 5 is Star Wars Outer Rim. This came out in 2019, I believe, and Star Wars Outer Rim lets you play the scum. You can play, smugglers and your characters. You can be a Han Solo or Lando Calrissian or an IG-88 or all sorts of these kind of minor characters throughout the Star Wars franchise as they attempt to essentially, get the most fame. I think that's what it is, fame points or whatever. But you're going on missions, you're upgrading your ship, you're getting your crew, you're going on bounty hunts, you are picking things up and deliver it. Meanwhile, you've got patrols, you've got rebel patrols and Imperial patrols and what have you. And every one of these guys can potentially be your enemy. And you're trying to get around them, but at the same time, you're trying to ingratiate with them and get reputation with them so that you can just move through them freely. It's really a fun and interesting system. I really enjoy this one quite a bit. It bears a lot of resemblance to Firefly, the board game. I think Firefly is the superior game. It's it's an epic experience. But if you want that same experience and you don't have the time for Firefly, then I think Star Wars Outer Rim is a great, stopgap for that. But it's a fun game in its own right. And I love this Star Wars theme they put on this. It's a very, very well done. That is Star Wars Outer Rim. That is from Fantasy Flight Games. My number 4 is a game that I started playing around 2012, I think. So maybe I've been playing this game for about 10 years, although I must confess I haven't played it in years. It's pretty much in a crate just over here, and I don't think I've unpacked it since I moved to Texas, and that was about 5 years ago. So it's probably been at least 5 years since I played this game. But this is Star Wars XWing. Star Wars XWing is great. First of all, you got the great ship models. But I remember the first time I'm playing this, and it was such a simple and intuitive idea. You're using these templates to move your guys. You're secretly selecting dials so you don't know what the other side is playing. You soup up your ship with some cards and some special abilities. You're attacking, but you can also defend and take certain actions with your ships. Again, it's very thematic of the Star Wars universe. It really puts you into the Star Wars universe. And it's every game I played is fun. I've had a lot of fun with. And it's I remember the first time I played with Zach, and I get it out, and I didn't have a mat or anything, we just had a table, and he's like, what is this? How do you play this without a board, you know? And then I showed him, and of course, with that first game, he was sucked in, and he started collecting it. He and his son started playing it a lot, and they have a huge collection of Star Wars X-Wing stuff as well. Now I gotta tell you, I'm talking about the first edition. They came out with the second edition a few years ago, and I played and reviewed the core set from the second edition. But I really was not too eager to invest in moving to the second edition, although I recognize some of the things in the second edition are superior. I'd already invested in the original, and I was cool with that. So I've kept that there, and I'm happy with what I have. And I got to break it out again, because just talking about it makes me think how much I love this game and how much I do want to play it again, because it is incredibly fun. That is Star Wars X-Wing. That is my number 4, and that is from Fantasy Flight Games. My number 3 is a game that just came out last month, from when I'm making this video, not too long ago. And it's great. And this is Star Wars the Deck Building Game. Star Wars the Deck Building Game is a great 2-player game where one of you is the Rebels, one of you is the Empire, and of course you're playing these cards, buying these cards against each other. But you can only buy, the Rebels can only buy the Rebel cards, the Empire can only buy the Imperial cards. But what's cool is you're trying to attack each other's base. So you have like attack, which you use to attack each other's base. But then you can also attack the other cards in the Galaxy row, and you can take them out, which gives you a small reward, but it denies those powerful cards to your enemy. And it's a great game when you're playing some Darth Vader comes out. And if you're the Empire, you're racing to try to get enough resources, which is the currency in the game, in order to buy that before your enemy musters enough attack to take Darth Vader out of the game. So it's really a fun dynamic, and I really, really have a lot of fun with it. I actually, Kim and I went to Hawaii here a few weeks ago, and I took this game with me. And at night, before we go to bed, we play this game, you know, whenever there was just an opportunity, downtime, which you needed to relax, which you do sometimes on vacation when you're moving constantly. We play this game, and we had a ball with it. We absolutely love this game. I have played it a ton just in the short time I've had it, and I really love it. Kind of reminds me somewhat of Star Realms, very similar in some ways, but also very different as well. And I love, 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 once again, the Star Wars theme. So that is Star Wars the Deck Building Game. That is number 3, and that is from Fantasy Flight Games. My number 2 Star Wars game of all time. This is a game that is very much like X-Wing. It came out a few years after X-Wing. And yet, to me, it's so much more depth. It has so much more depth, and it's so much more strategic. This, of course, is Star Wars Armada. Now, Star Wars Armada is in X-Wing, you've got the capital ships fighting each other. In Armada, or in X-Wing, you've got the fighters fighting each other. In Armada, you've got the capital ships. So you've got big Star Destroyers and frigates. And here, of course, they're much slower, they're much more lumbering. But here, when you get hit, it's not just a matter of blocking the hit. You've got decisions you can make about how to deal with that hit. But it's always fun to see these big lumbering ships move around. You really get a sense of a real naval battle here. You do have little fighter squadrons you can move around that also are involved here. But this is just a thoroughly fun game. Man, there was a time where it was like I was playing this every chance I got. And I think for the first few years after this came out, this was one of my absolute favorite games. And unfortunately, again, it's one I packed away before I went to Texas, and I don't think I played it since. So that's, again, like 5 or 6 years since I played this game. And I got to break it out and play it again, because just, again, talking about it, I'm like, ugh, it's so much fun. It's again, just an epic space battle game, and I love it so much. So that is number 2, that is Armada, and that is from Fantasy Flight Games. My number 1 game, Star Wars game of all time, and most of you, I imagine, if you know anything about me and the channel, you probably know where I'm heading with this, because it is a fantastic game, and spoiler alert, it's from Fantasy Flight Games. But this game came out a few years ago, I think it's 2016, and this game is fundamentally the original trilogy in a box. And it's beautiful. This is Star Wars Rebellion. Star Wars Rebellion, 2-player game. One of you is the Empire, one of you is the Rebels. And the Empire is desperately searching to try to find the Rebels' hidden base. The Rebels are, of course, trying to they're trying to move their hidden base. They're trying to find they want to keep it safe. They want to keep it secret. And the Rebels, or the Empire, is hunting it down. They have probe droids so they can see where it is not every couple of turns to narrow it down. But the Rebels, it's really a game of cat and mouse, because the Rebels are going on these hit-and-run raids. They're not strong enough to take on the Empire militarily. It's a very asymmetric game. but they can do these things to really hurt the Empire. Meanwhile, the Empire has all these resources. It's got these huge fleets, but it can't search everywhere. So you can get real lucky in the beginning of the game and try to find it, but that rarely happens. Usually the person that's playing the rebels is fairly shrewd. But it's just every game of this I play, I got a big old grin on my face because, as I say, it is Star Wars on the box. But you can, it's almost like the original trilogy, but you can make your own stories. You can engage in your own stories here. For instance, I played games where I played a game. I think the last time I played it with a friend of mine, Princess Leia. I was the Emperor, and I was able to turn Princess Leia to the dark side, so she became one of my agents. And that's really the core of the game. Is you're putting out these people going on missions, and you can the Empire can capture the rebels. And in the case of Princess Leia, you can, or Luke, you can turn him to the dark side. But you could also Lando Calrissian could turn out to be a Jedi, and he could train with Yoda. You've got all these different scenarios that can play out. You can put somebody else in Carbonite, right? You can blow up, the Empire can blow up different planets with the Death Star. The game starts with the Death Star on the board. So it's just really phenomenal. I really love this game so much. It's not only one of my favorite Star Wars games of all time. It's in my top 10. I think it's in my top 5 games of all time. It's just an amazing game that I love so much. And I'm rambling now, but I just want to convey what an awesome game this is. So that is my number 1. That is Star Wars Rebellion, once again from Fantasy Flight Games. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us on the Discriminating Gamer. I always love sharing these lists with you. Do you like these games? Do you not like these games? Are there other Star Wars games you'd put on this list? I'm always eager to hear what people have to say. Just keep it civil. But please let me know. Comment here on YouTube, on Board Game Geek. Please subscribe to us here on YouTube and follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, etc., etc. And if you like this video or you like the channel in general, I'd urge you to go ahead and click on the Super Thanks button here on YouTube and leave us a contribution if that's something you would like to do. I'd also ask you to please check out my other channel. That is Cody Carlson, PhD. That is where we talk about military history and books on history. I'm currently uploading my lectures from my World War II class onto that channel, so please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. It would mean a lot to me. And please leave a thumb to this video. I usually post these top 10 lists in the forums on Board Game Geek. Please leave a thumb and comment there as well. We really, really appreciate it. I got to tell you, I'm not a big fan of coming up with Star Wars jokes for these videos. Too often they just feel forced.